Judy Crow of Crow Farms on the eastern shore of Maryland talks about agribusiness.
Our farm's in Kennedyville, Maryland. We're 5 minutes from Galena and about 15 minutes from Chestertown on the eastern shore. And our farm is 365 acres. That was primarily corn and soybeans. And now we've made some changes. At our age, we had to start looking at do we want to put the farm in land preservation, because my husband's very adamant he wants to keep the farm and preserve that. So we have 110 acres in farm preservation currently, and then we started figuring out what we want to do with the rest of it, and we started learning about growing grapes. We put in a vineyard a couple years ago. We've harvested grapes. We're finding out that once you put in a vineyard and harvest grapes, you can make more money with a winery. And the winery idea...
Here's our label.
Yeah. Between my husband and myself, we're second marriage. We have 5 sons. And, when we started talking about the winery, they're all professionals all over the United States. And they decided, at least one of them's decided to come back and head up the winery and vineyard aspect of our farm. So,
and we talked about that if you want to sustain a farm, you are in a different manner than the corn and the soy and the wheat, then you're doing a lot of mini businesses within the farm, and one of them being a winery. And 2 things I'd like to ask you about that, because one, the winery is a pull-in for your son. His interest in the farm is because of, not just, but because of the winery, and wanting him to stay here.
Right, exactly. There's something about, well, first of all, the 365 acres in primarily corn and soybeans, and it was a dairy farm, and it was a prosperous dairy farm. And then my husband, he sold the dairy herd and started looking at the beef cattle. Is there a way that we can sort of market that and reshape that? And so we had 10 when we started about 4 or 5 years ago. Now we're up to 90. They're all grown on the farm. They're grass fed. So that's a shift. We're moving more towards organic plantings. We're moving more towards hay to feed the cattle, and grains, straw for bedding for the cattle. And folks, when they come visit the farm, they get to see firsthand, when we talk about grass-fed and how we care for our animals, they get to see how that impacts the taste of the product.
Well, we sort of think of this as something new, but in fact, that paradigm of what you're doing is actually something that is a throwback to the past, would you say?
Exactly, and that's what my husband likes to say. He kind of remembers when he was a child, the farm feels like it did then, and he thinks that farming is going to have to change from the large custom farming to the smaller niche type market of farming. And certainly growing grapes in Maryland, it's something that people don't readily think is a possibility. We've put in 3.5 acres. We're going to be putting in another 6 acres this year, and our goal is to put up to 20 acres in.
I'm amazed. I mean, growing grapes on the eastern shore, what kind of soil does that take?
Well, we have a sassafras mixture of soil, but what is really important is if a farmer is interested in learning more about grape growing, University of Maryland, Joe Fiola in the extension office is very helpful. And like my son, who we brought him into the folds of growing grapes, we didn't know anything about it, but it's such the Maryland Grape Growers Association, the University of Maryland, the Maryland Winery Association is very, very helpful in disseminating information and offering training and helping you to understand the best practice.
And one of the things that you said that is helpful in growing grapes here on the shore is the cool winds that come off of the water in the evening.
Yeah. And on our farm, we're very flat, and we're very, very windy because we're such, an open plain area, and that allows also, for airflow to prevent some mildew problems, but it also allows for a great deal of sun throughout the day.
Visit greencourses.net and, of course, the Eastern Shore of Maryland.